We'll be talking about the aftermath of the sexual revolution today. Friends, it's going to be eye-opening.
It's time for The Line of Fire with your host, biblical scholar and cultural commentator, Dr. Michael Brown. Your voice for moral sanity and spiritual clarity. Call 866-34-TRUTH to get on The Line of Fire. And now, here's your host, Dr. Michael Brown.
Thank you so much for joining us today on The Line of Fire. Michael Brown, as always, delighted to be with you. If you're listening on radio, you can hear the smile in my voice. If you're watching, blessings to you. Hey, everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook, make sure to give a thumbs up or like, and then even just share the broadcast and let us know where you're watching from. And those listening around the country, so great to be with you. Okay, I'm going to give out the phone number, but I don't know that I'm going to get to calls. So just a heads up, 866-34-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a fascinating guest on talking about the aftermath of the sexual revolution. This is something I've studied personally, and I've observed, I've watched in the culture for many years, but I am absolutely sure I'm going to learn some new stuff today, and you are as well. I think it's going to be really eye-opening at the bottom of the hour. But I'm going to lead into it with some things I want to talk about first as we focus on moral and cultural issues. Remember, if you're not getting my emails, you're missing out on a ton of free resources every single week. And you might say, Dr. Brown, you write so many articles and put out so many videos, it's hard to keep track. No problem, because every week we'll send you once a week, here are the latest articles with you can just click right on them and here's a caption about what it's about. Boom, another email, here are the latest videos. Every single week, so you won't miss anything that way. And when we have a new resource package or when we launch a new web initiative, we've got some new programs on, all of that, you'll be the first to know about it. If I'm coming your way to speak, you'll find out about it. So sign up for the emails at askdrbrown.org, askdrbrown.org. Sign up, you'll be blessed, and we'll get you on a welcome tour, tell you more about my own story from LSD to PhD, tell you more about the 3 R's of our ministry and how we can serve you. So make sure you connect with us, sign for the emails. It would be a delight to be in more contact with you. Also, tomorrow, Thoroughly Jewish Thursday, God willing, we got a bunch of very interesting things to talk about. But I have interacted directly with a professor who is grossly misrepresented in my Hebrew Israelite debate with Guerrilla Hebrew, grossly misrepresented. And I'm going to tell you exactly what he had to say about how he was misrepresented. Looking at the actual footage, seeing the way he was misrepresented, exactly what he had to say. And also, God's been burdening me. I know it's a hate group. I know it's a cult. I know it's deeply blinded. I know they turn things completely upside down in terms of meaning. And so I knew that going in. I fully knew that. But God's been burdening me and other intercessors to really pray for them. So we're going to pray because that's the great weapon we have. We can go to our Heavenly Father and pray for those that hate us and pray for those that lie about us. We can pray for them. So we're going to do that together, God willing, on the broadcast tomorrow. All right. I've often quoted psychologist David Myers, who said that if you fell asleep in the year 1960 and woke up in the year 2000, and he wrote this around 2000, that you'd wake up to the divorce rate doubled. Now, that was 2000. What is it today? You'd wake up to teen suicide tripled. What's it up to today? You'd wake up to reported violent crime up 4 times, prison population up 5 times, children born out of wedlock up 6 times. Now, if you've ever studied this, if you've ever looked at the data, kids born out of wedlock have a much higher percentage of problems later in life, kids that are raised without a father figure. It's rarer to be raised without the mother because the mother isn't only going to be there. The father is more likely to be absentee in a broken home. Kids raised in fatherless homes, the disproportionate stats in terms of problems that can arise from incarceration to dropping out of school to violent crimes to you name it. That's for men. Women raised in fatherless homes can have all kinds of other problems. Thank God for those of you raised in fatherless homes that made it, and thank God for the courageous single parents that poured into you. But statistically, we know that you break down the family in this way, and it's massive trouble. David Myers said that from 1960 to 2000, couples living together outside of wedlock would go up 7 times. And then rates of depression soaring off the charts, massively higher than World War II times, and then massively higher today than in 2000. Much of this shift took place as a direct result of the counterculture revolution of the 60s. Some of you listening were part of it. I was part of it. I got caught up in that. I saw my first rock concert. I was 13 years old, saw Jimi Hendrix in concert. By the time I was 14, I was smoking pot. By the time I was 15, I was shooting heroin. Now, most didn't go that far in terms of the drug use, but we got caught up. Rebellion was the in thing. Breaking with the generations was the in thing. Instead of respect for the older generation, there was mockery of the older generation. You're out of touch. The older generation is saying, America, love it or leave it. The younger generation is saying, hey, make love, not war. And everything changed. The older generation, very patriotic. The younger generation kind of trashing the nation and the leadership, et cetera. And in the midst of this time of upheaval, that's often categorized as a time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, add in Eastern religion as well, especially when the Beatles went to India, and that became the big fad. But sex, drugs, rock and roll, Eastern religion, that just swept through a generation. And you might say, yeah, but people calm down after a while. And, they stop partying after a while, and they don't get high as much after a while, and they settle down and get married after a while. Many did. But many of the radicals, many of the leaders just became part of the society. They never got rid of their radical ideology, but they became business leaders. They never got rid of their radical ideology, but they became political leaders. They became educators. I'll mention one name in particular, Bill Ayers. So Bill Ayers was a member of the Weathermen. Weathermen, they were one of the most radical groups in the 60s and then a little bit thereafter. They were especially protesting the Vietnam War, and they were violent. Now, they didn't try to kill people, but they would blow up buildings, an empty building, but they'd blow it up. So, I mean, they were violent. They were a terrorist group in that regard. And Ayers, after his career in the Weathermen, became a respected academic, a university professor, and a mentor to President Barack Obama, an influential person in his life. So this is what happened. The radical ideologies just became part of the mainstream of society. The rebellion of one generation became the establishment of the next generation. And I was speaking last week at a Messianic Jewish Passover Seder at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and a pastor came up to me, African-American pastor with a great heart for Israel, and he said to me, I was with you when you preached at Victor Torres' church 20 years ago. Victor Torres, a dear Hispanic brother, a leader in Teen Challenge for years, a great testimony. I was preaching at his church. Now, it was probably a little less than 20 years ago, based on what he said. But this pastor said to me, you were warning us back then about what was going to happen with the gay agenda. You were telling us where things were going, and everybody thought you were crazy. But everything that you said, it's come to pass. And I said to him, the good news is the same God who showed me where things would go is the same God who showed me that there'd also be a pushback. So the bad news is that the sexual revolution, the eroding of marriage and family, the breakdown of the home, and then with that, the opening the door to other things, for example, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer activism. And I say that making clear that my issue is the activism, not the people. These are people for whom Jesus died. These are people loved by God, like you and I are loved by God before we were saved. These are people that have been created in the image of God and yet are fallen like the rest of us. So if I found out there was a gay activist in my neighborhood, first thing I do is ask if we could have a meal together. And I've done this. I did this over the years, especially early on when God called me into this. First thing I do is say, can we have a meal together? And not so I could preach to them, but so I could hear their story. I understand their background, relate to them better as fellow human beings, have a greater love for them as people, and then explain why I differ, if that's appropriate, in our discussion, or explain what makes me tick and share my own testimony. So the people are not our enemies. Satan is our enemy, and Satan wants to destroy gays and straights. Satan wants to destroy whites and blacks. Satan wants to destroy Gentiles and Jews. Satan wants to destroy all of us, right? That's the reality. He has us marked, all right? He's our common enemy. We don't wrestle with flesh and blood, Ephesians 6, but with principalities, powers. It's a demonic battle that we're in. Nonetheless, at the same time, we recognize there is a dangerous agenda. Oh, yes, I have been marked. I have been singled out for saying that the effort to redefine marriage was satanic. Yes, I believe that. You say, well, you just offended everybody. Well, you heard my heart. I love people. I care about people, but I'm going to speak the truth, even if it's divisive, so be it. Even if it's offensive, so be it. We speak the truth with love, but if we don't speak the truth, we're not loving people. It's that simple. And if we really love people, we will speak the truth. So I've watched this transformation come to our society. I've watched the negative. I've watched it unfold. For several years now, 50%, so 1 out of 2 of all first-time births to women in America, so not a mother having her third or fourth or fifth kid, but a mother having her first child, 50% of all of those births in America are out of wedlock. And it's just the norm. You may be watching some TV series and the couple living together out of wedlock. It's just the norm. And then having a kid together out of wedlock, it's just the norm. And for the record, couples that do not marry but live together out of wedlock and then marry actually have a higher divorce rate than those who don't. The whole thing, well, look, I'm going to take the car out in the trial run first, then if I like it, I'll buy the car. So the same thing, we'll live together, get to know each other. It generally speaking, it works worse, not better. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, it works worse, not better in terms of long-term outcomes. So we have a situation now in America where the administration is passionately fighting for the right of a biological boy to share a locker room with a biological girl if he identifies as female. They are passionately fighting for, quote, the right of a 13-year-old girl to get a full mastectomy if she feels that she's really a boy trapped in a girl's body. They are passionately fighting for quite the right to parents to put their 10-year-old child on hormone blockers to stop the onset of puberty, and likely chemically castrating them for life. The administration aggressively pushing for these things have turned upside down. However, the reason I bring all this up is to say that the pushback continues. I'm going to give you some examples of pushback taking place as I speak in America today. We will be right back. First, a word from our sponsor, Trivita.
Chronic inflammation is the greatest health threat to humanity. Infections, injuries, toxins, poor diet, and chronic stress can attack your immune system and lead to chronic inflammation. But now there's a solution you can fight this dangerous silent killer with. Nopalea, made from the superfruit of the Nepal cactus, containing a unique group of bioflavonoids clinically shown to reduce chronic inflammation.
In a random, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, it showed a reduction of elevated at-risk C-reactive protein levels, resulting in an improvement in range of motion in the back, neck, and joints, and an overall improvement in the quality of life.
Nopalea has helped thousands of people by lowering levels of chronic inflammation.
Let's hear what customers are saying.
I'm a personal trainer and owner of 3 gyms. Super excited doing a renovation in here, bringing new equipment in. And as I was bringing the new equipment in, I was trying to move a piece. I moved, the equipment didn't move, and I injured myself severely. So it was frustrating. It was really depressing. I wasn't able to work out. I wasn't able to train. I wasn't able to do just normal daily functions. After taking Nopalea, I found that it really helped with my recovery, not only with my severe injury in my back, but it also helped in my recovery of my workouts.
Nopalea has helped thousands of people by lowering levels of chronic inflammation.
To place your order, call 800-771-5584 or online at Trivita.com. As a new customer introductory offer, use promo code BROWN25 for a 25% discount on your purchase of Nopalea. And 100% of your first order will go to the support of Line of Fire. Go to Trivita.com or call 800-771-5584 800-771-5584. Again, 800-771-5584.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Line of Fire broadcast. Michael Brown, blessed to be with you. Yeah, I'm not going to give out the phone number again because I want to share a few things, and I've got a guest coming on at the bottom of the hour. And I want to give ample time to our guest, Mary Eberstadt, when she does come on. I may have mispronounced the name. That's the one thing I'm not sure about is the pronunciation of the name. In any case, I want to talk to you a little bit about the pushback that continues. Let's think of this for a minute. Why did so many Americans become positive on the idea of, quote, gay marriage, same-sex marriage? Why did they become positive? I mean, it was so foreign. You just go back a generation, and even the idea of it was absolutely impossible to fathom because we knew marriage was the union of a man and a woman. Just like 2 + 2 is 4 is math, not spelling, and CAT spells cat is spelling, not math. The same way we understood that the two essential ingredients for marriage are a man and a woman. That was a given. In fact, I can point you to major gay activist literature from the late 1980s where they wouldn't even countenance the idea of changing the definition of marriage. That was never going to happen. That was a given that was never going to happen. How is it that so many Americans became open to it? Well, the constant bombardment of media presenting things a certain way does have its effect, as some of these very same gay activists called for, propaganda through the media, their word, propaganda. That was one thing. A second thing was that you may have a gay friend or relative, seems like a nice person. Maybe they're open now, they're coming out more, or friend of a friend. Why shouldn't they be able to marry if it's, hey, love is love, right? The ongoing breaking down of marriage is a third thing. I've often said that no-fault heterosexual divorce in the church did more to destroy marriage than all gay activists combined. So the eroding of marriage already losing its meaning, its importance, and even its longevity being so terribly threatened. Nancy said that growing up, my wife Nancy, she was embarrassed for anyone to find out she came from a divorced home. That's how rare it was as she was growing up. We're the same age. And then a fourth factor was we didn't want to be bigoted. We didn't want to seem mean-spirited. We knew our terrible history with slavery and with bigotry and with racism. And we didn't want to do that again. And if you're born this way, this is like the new civil rights movement. So these are some of the factors that came in to changing national opinion about same-sex, quote, marriage. But many of the people who were open to that, they didn't sign up for radical trans activism, nor did they sign up for the gaying of society in a much wider way, nor did they sign up for Christians being silenced in the workplace for daring to speak out against the gay activist agenda, etc. So because of that, there is a pushback that is taking place. Now, the church must lead the way. Remember, we are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. We must lead the way, not politics, not culture. We must lead the way, and then culture and politics will follow that. So we are involved in all these ways, but gospel first, then working its way out into these other areas of society. That's the way we bring about lasting change. And then, of course, the weapon of prayer being the greatest weapon that we have. But these are symptoms now of some of the pushback. So you have a woman who's now identifying as a man now identifying as a woman, Dylan Mulvaney. And this man, who now identifies as a woman, gets a big contract with Nike, 365 days a year being a woman. And he is now going to be the face for being a woman. What? What are you talking about? And then Bud Light, Bud Light did the campaign with the 365 days a year with this man as the face of being a woman, biological male, the face of being a woman. And then Nike, they've got a new sports bra, so who's going to be the one that's the face of this wearing a sports bra? A biological male, and who identifies as female. Why in the world would they do that? I mean, isn't that offensive to women? That the best woman, the best face of a woman is someone that's a biological male? that can't relate to being a woman all the years, that can't relate to what a woman grows up with, that can't relate to a monthly period, that can't relate to the possibility of pregnancy, that can't relate to all the unique things that a woman knows and feels and understands that a man never will, no matter how much sex change surgery he may have. Isn't it an insult to when you have Bruce Jenner as Woman of the Year in Glamour magazine? Isn't that an insult to other women? So, and there are many feminists, even lesbian feminists, that oppose this wholeheartedly. And they oppose biological males competing against females. And like you're taking, woman now has no meaning whatsoever. So, of course, there's a pushback. I'm just going to cite a couple of articles. Backlash. Country star Travis Tritt dumping Anheuser-Busch from his tour after Dylan Mulvaney deal. Veteran country music star Travis Tritt announced Thursday, so last week, he is no longer having Anheuser-Busch products on his touring hospitality rider. What's more, Tritt says, I know many other artists who are doing the same. They're offended by this. They didn't draw back with same-sex marriage in the same way. They didn't boycott certain companies, but saying, hey, I'm out. You're not going to be part of my tour. This is offensive to women. It's a slap in the face of real women. Are you saying Dylan Mulvaney's not a real woman? Yes, I am. He is not a real woman. And then here's another. Whoops, let me just click here. John Rich is latest country star to dump Bud Light after trans Dylan Mulvaney deal. What should I replace it with is his question. Country music star John Rich has added his name to the growing list of performers boycotting Anheuser-Busch for signing transgender activist, Joe Biden supporter, and TikTok icon Dylan Mulvaney to a lucrative endorsement deal centered on its Bud Light beer. Wow. So the push, we've been telling you for years. Last year, we even said, is the year of pushing back. Little did I know at the beginning of the year that Roe v. Wade would be overturned during the year, but we knew it's the year of pushing back. It is I had a list of scores and scores of articles, and I would get on the air and talk about it, and then I just stopped keeping track. It was just too unwieldy to keep track of. Nike angers feminists after choosing controversial trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney as new face of its women's sports bra, days after Bud Light was slammed for putting her on can. So, again, you think, why in the world would you do it? Now, one theory is because the Human Rights Campaign, the world's largest gay activist organization, that they have their corporate equality index, and they're going to rate you as to how friendly you are to these various LGBT causes, used to be LGBT plus causes. And they don't want to take a negative hit here, so they're going to show how incredibly, quote, woke they are in that sense, in the bad sense of the word, how woke they are. And how on the cutting edge of a social justice, you're on the wrong side. It is social insanity, let alone moral insanity, and it may well be commercial insanity as well. Here's another related story. Maureen Callahan. So Nike pays a trans woman who parodies my gender to wear their sports bras, but was once accused of cutting salaries of its pregnant ambassadors. Enough. Ladies, let the pushback begin. So, friends, as I've been shouting out for years about the coming pushback, as people are even using that very word, and it is trans activism that has provoked it. So I understand this is specific in specific areas, but it's part of what we said would happen, that those with this radical agenda would overplay their hand, and we're seeing it in front of our eyes. It is the inevitable progression. LGBTQ plus, the inevitable progression. And the answer is not hating people. The answer is not getting mean-spirited. The answer is not demonizing them all as the most wicked people on the planet. The answer is standing firm for biblically based values that are for the good of the society, basing our marriages, our families on biblical principles, raising our kids in the fear of God and the love of God, and living godly, exemplary lives wherever we are. Exemplary lives in the workplace, wherever God places us, in the school, in the neighborhood, lifting up Jesus. As we do, change will come, and then let it trickle down politically, educationally, all these other ways. Okay, we'll be right back with my special guest, Mary Eberstadt.
This is how we rise. Oh, it's all resistance. can't resist us.
Hey friends, this is Dr. Michael Brown. I want to invite you to join our support team. Make an investment of $1 a day that will absolutely last forever. You know, the Lord has given us a holy mandate to blanket America with the Line of Fire broadcast. And on a regular basis, we hear from folks writing in, Dr. Brown, I used to be a practicing homosexual. I listened to you. I heard grace and truth together. I was changed. We hear from pastors who say, thank you for speaking with compassion, but giving us backbone and courage. And we know across America, so many believers are getting healthy and strong through listening to the broadcast, through listening to these messages as we tackle the controversies, the most difficult issues of the day. We even hear from former Muslims who've come to faith, from Jewish people who now believe in Jesus, Yeshua the Messiah, through this broadcast and our resources. So join our support team. $1 or more per day makes you an official torchbearer. Immediately, you will get access to hundreds of hours of terrific online classes and exclusive video content. Every single month, we'll send you a brand new audio message, and along with it, an insider prayer newsletter where we'll talk about the things that are going to be coming in our ministry and share some of the amazing testimonies of the fruit that you are a part of. And when you do sign up, I want to give you 2 books as a special gift. First, Compassionate Father, A Consuming Fire. Who is the God of the Old Testament? I take the best of my Hebrew and Old Testament scholarship, wrap it together in this book that you'll find eye-opening, answering many of the questions you have. And then Revolution, my classic book that tells you how to wage war the Jesus way, overcoming evil with good, overcoming hatred with love. We are transformed. We can bring transformation to the nation. So call this number now, 800-538-5275. That's 800-538-5275. Say, I'd like to become a torchbearer, or go to askdrbrown.org. Click on Donate Monthly Support.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Every so often, when we have a guest scheduled, they have a wrong time zone or something comes up and there's a mix-up. I've had it with interviews I've done. And we have not yet gotten hold of our guest, Mary Eberstadt. Her book, she wrote a famous book, Adam and Eve After the Pill, in 2012. And the new book is Adam and Eve After the Pill Revisited. So hopefully we are connecting now. I've been on many an interview right to the last second, and then just got on in time. It looks like we are good now. Great. All right, we've got our guest here with us. Mary, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Are you there?
Hello.
Yes, you're on the air, Mary. Thanks for joining us today. All right, glad we got you here at the last minute. So just a little bit about your background. You hold a Panula Chair in Christian Culture at the Catholic Information Center in Washington, D.C. You're Senior Research Fellow at the Faith and Reason Institute. And where I knew your name, Mary, was for the Adam and Eve After the Pill book. So when we got sent a copy of the new book, Adam and Eve After the Pill Revisited, I thought, great, we've got to have you on. So thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Dr. Brown.
All right, so first question. Adam and Eve After the Pill, paint a picture of what that book did and kind of the aftermath, not get into your new book, but the response to your book when you wrote it in 2012.
Well, I'd like to say at the outset that I've done a lot of different kinds of writing, and that book was the beginning of a 15-year journey into the legacy of the sexual revolution, because from other research, I knew that there's a lot of social science data suggesting that something about the way we have been living since the 1960s has created a lot of damage among people. So the first Adam and Eve book, Adam and Eve After the Pill, was designed to look at that at the grassroots level, to look at the effects of, say, fatherlessness, divorce, abortion, etc., on men, women, and children. It was what I think of as a microscopic look at the revolution. And it was, although written from a very strong perspective and making a strong contrarian argument, the book was really using social science, especially in the footnotes, to document everything I was talking about. And so what came as a surprise was how powerfully that message seemed to resonate, very much against my expectations. I started getting communications and emails from people who had been deeply touched by the book, which was not written as a book of self-help or not as an emotional book at all. So that was the first big surprise that got me thinking that the thesis was hitting a nerve because there was something to it.
Got it. So when you began to break these things down, people realized, okay, this is not a Catholic argument, a Christian argument. This is a sociological argument. Just give us an overview. For example, once you break down marriage, family, people raised in fatherless homes, how does that work out? Grassroots level, what does that actually mean?
Well, let's start with fatherless homes. Now, not every child without a dad at home is going to be in trouble. But if kids get into serious trouble, very often that is the common denominator. Our maximum security prisons, for example, have overwhelmingly in their population men who were the products of fatherless homes. This has been very well documented now for 50 years by criminologists. So that's one example of a bad outcome tied to the sexual revolution. But there are others, too. There are data on educational attainment and truancy and drug use, et cetera, that, again, trace back to the broken home or absent parents. So we have this data. What I'm trying to do is connect the dots to make a moral argument about it, to say, look, this is now a humanitarian issue. The sexual revolution and what it is doing to society is something that we have to alleviate. And that's, I think, what was different about the argument, Dr. Brown, is that I was using data that sociologists themselves know very well, but to get to a different conclusion, which is this shows us that something about the way we are living today is harming many people.
So it'd be the same way where nutritionists studies trends in the American diet over a period of decades, and you see increased heart disease, increased cancer, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we're eating wrong things, and you may not see it and feel it immediately, but inevitably it does go in a certain direction. And before we focus on the new book, Adam and Eve After the Pill Revisited, so we think of the horrible toll that abortion has taken just in terms of the destruction of over 60 million lives before they could leave the womb. Are there other ways that may be more subtle, not as obvious, in which abortion has been destructive in our culture?
Well, if you believe, as I believe, and I would bet you believe, that babies humanize adults, that babies teach us how to sacrifice ourselves, then obviously the absence of so many babies has a coarsening effect on society at large. And I think this is part of what we're seeing in these discussions about why are our politics so acrimonious and why does everybody seem to be at other people's throats. I think part of the answer is that are now out of the habit of taking care of the young and vulnerable, thanks to abortion and thanks to other effects of the sexual revolution. And once again, we see a kind of harm here that may be more insidious, but is still very much part of the picture and something that we should address.
Yes, these things do have ripple effects in so many ways. You know, it reminds me of being in Alaska one time, and they took us out on this boat tour, and there were all these seals that were on this giant rock. They were just sunning themselves there. And the host on the boat was explaining that they allowed the hunting of these seals for a while, but then they found out that it messed up the whole ecology system because the seals lived on this and then this on that, and just doing this one thing messed up everything else. And it's got to be the same with these gross departures from God's plan and God's best and the way he just set things up, that we're going to have these horrific consequences. So birth control pill, 1960, not a lot of fanfare, but obviously a key thing, and ties into the title of your book. So you were very much aware on the cutting edge of these sociological studies in 2012. Did you expect things to get where they are today when you wrote the book, or are you surprised?
I was not surprised, just because I feel as if all that research put me a little ahead of the curve in seeing what was coming. So, for example, one of the things I talk about in the new book is loneliness in Western societies. There is something called loneliness studies because there is such pervasive feelings of isolation in the United States, the countries of Western Europe, etc. Now, where is this coming from? It's there for young people, it's there for old people, it's there throughout the adult years. My argument, again, is that this is one more consequence of living as if recreation and procreation are two totally different things, and as if procreation is somehow negotiable, or we can just dispense with it without any harm to ourselves. Loneliness in the West today is a consequence of many millions of decisions of autonomy, voting against the family, voting against surrounding oneself with people who will love you and have your back. This is what we're seeing in loneliness. Abortion is a factor in this too, I believe, Dr. Brown, because the subtraction of all those millions of lives amounts to the subtraction, say, of siblings from the lives of other siblings, of potential aunts and uncles, and et cetera, all the way down the human chain. So you are absolutely right to invoke the example of the animal kingdom, because if we ran these experiments on animals that we are running on ourselves, if we were forcing them to live so radically differently from all the social creatures that came before them, we could see the harm that we would be causing. But somehow we don't turn that lens on ourselves and see what we're doing to humanity.
Extraordinary. Yeah, and even turning that back around the way you did, if we manipulated the social lives, the mating lives, the patterns, that would be the extinction of various species and things like that. Friends, the book, Adam and Eve After the Pill, Revisited. All right, so what's the revisiting you do 10 plus years later in your new book?
So 10 plus years later, I am looking at what I call the macroscopic effect of the birth control pill and the rest. In other words, instead of looking at individuals, I'm looking at three large areas. I'm asking, what did the sexual revolution do to our politics? What is it doing to society? And what is it doing within Christianity? That's the last third of the book.
All right, so let's obviously we have limited time, folks. You need to read the whole book, Adam and Eve After the Pill, Revisited. But let's just give a summary of each of those areas, then we'll dive into at least one of them a little more deeply. But just go ahead, give it an overview, the macroscopic overview of each of these.
Well, to give one example of how the revolution is changing politics, I talk in one chapter about summer 2020, when there were over 10,000 riots and protests across the United States, of which turned violent. And I'm sure people will remember this very well. So I dig deeply into some of the leaders involved in this movement. And I dig into the backgrounds of some of the people whose names became, were on the nightly news. And my point is to connect fatherlessness to these phenomena, the lack of family, the absence of being anchored in a stable place, is something that we saw over and over again with these furious young men, seemingly unattached to anything, and raised without any thought of restraining themselves out in the streets of the United States. So that's one political aspect I would draw attention to. About Christianity, I think it's very clear by now that the sexual revolution has become the dividing lines within every denomination.
Yes.
It is where the fight is. People are not fighting over the Ten Commandments. People are not fighting over the Sermon on the Mount. No, they are fighting over whether Christianity can accommodate the sexual revolution or not. And so I would encourage especially the Christians among us to think about that section of the book in particular.
Hey, Mayor, if you could stay right here, just a couple more quick questions on the other side of the break. Friends, the new book, Adam and Eve After the Pill, Revisited. by all means, check it out. We'll be right back.
Nopalea has helped thousands of people by lowering levels of chronic inflammation.
I really enjoy being physical. It's something I've just always loved, but I've definitely had times where it's really crippled me up. Being a horse trainer can be pretty physically demanding with all the duties that I have, not just riding horses for a living, saddling horses, caring for the horses. I feel like Nopalea just took the edge off, and then it's continued to keep me from getting sore. Nopalea, it's been a huge blessing.
Now there's a solution by lowering levels of chronic inflammation. Nopalea, made from the superfruit of the Nepal cactus, containing a unique group of bioflavonoids clinically shown to reduce chronic inflammation.
In a random, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, it showed a reduction of elevated at-risk C-reactive protein levels, resulting in an improvement in range of motion in the back, neck, and joints, and an overall improvement in the quality of life.
It's fun to be on the golf course again. I'm able to swing the club freely. Hopefully, I'm hitting better golf shots. Nopalea has allowed me to get back on the golf course, enjoy the game that I love, and maybe even give me that little edge to beat my friends at the game.
Nopalea has helped thousands of people by lowering levels of chronic inflammation.
To place your order, call 800-771-5584 or online at Trivita.com. As a new customer introductory offer, use promo code BROWN25 for a 25% discount on your purchase of Nopalea. And 100% of your first order will go to the support of Line of Fire. Go to Trivita.com or call 800-771-5584. Again, 800-771-5584.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
All right, I'm back with my guest, Mary Eberstadt. Just a few more minutes. The new book, Adam and Eve, After the Pill, Revisited. You know, I looked into the BLM statement when it was posted. It ended up getting pulled when a number of us drew attention to it. But the absent word was fathers. If there's any reference to father, it was in a negative context, you know, in the oppressive patriarchal society. And you just read through it, and it had all those ingredients that brought about that radicality, as opposed to a real righteous standing for righteousness in the nation. So this is a larger question, but I just want to make sure I ask this before you go. I'm an evangelical believer, Messianic Jewish to be technical, but evangelical believer, and have worked with evangelical leaders around the world, rallying them for many similar causes. But often it's been Catholic leaders that have been a step ahead, say on the pro-life movement, for example. Right now, your assessment within the Catholic Church, because we see it in Protestant denominations, like you say, it is the battle. And the Catholic Church, with its massive 1 billion plus people and the world influence that it carries, and the Pope carrying so much weight, how do you see things developing in the Catholic Church in terms of the aftermath of the sexual revolution?
Well, it's no surprise that there are voices within the Catholic Church, too, that want to do the same thing that various Protestant denominations have done and draw a smiley face over the hard parts of the faith and tell people that really they can live however they want and we'll welcome them in. Everybody is welcome. The problem is that's not how Christianity, Catholic or Protestant, developed in the first place. It developed with a really strict rule book about how we are to live, just as Judaism before it had a rule book that was strict by the standards of the communities around it. And so what's disheartening is seeing that just as this evidence is piling up, the evidence I'm talking about, saying that if, the good book didn't exist, then our lives are going to be a mess, as the lives of many people are today. Just as we see all of that coming through the evidence, there are still voices maintaining that we can somehow accommodate this sexual revolution without compromising Christianity. And in the last third of the book, I argue that this is not possible. Whether you're Protestant or Catholic, there is a record there of the attempts to do exactly that, and they have failed.
Excellent. So, friends, this is carefully documented. The work that Mary does is carefully documented. You can go to the sources, and the evidence is undeniable in terms of where things go. What are you hoping that readers of your book will take away once they finish it?
Well, I hope that religious readers will be heartened. You know, we live in a time, Dr. Brown, when so many people who are believers feel beleaguered and feel
Yes.
like they're out of step with the time. But what I'm trying to do in this book is show them that there is a vindication that's already out there in the form of this evidence that is not theological, that's been assembled by perfectly secular social scientists and other experts. And that body of evidence points to the truth of Christian teaching. This is a way of connecting the dots that I think, if it's just properly understood, will give believers heart.
Yes.
And they deserve to have it because that vindication is there.
Yes. And it's such important work because when you realize, hey, this is not just my personal belief, and this is not just some bigoted religious fundamentalist idea that I learned from my parents or grandparents. This is God's way. God's ways are best. And when we deviate from his plan, it's all this chaos. So giving people that information, it does strengthen the backbone. It does give them courage to stand. So once more, friends, the book, Adam and Eve, After the Pill Revisited. Thanks so much for the hard research, all the work you've done, and for the book. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Brown.
My joy. My joy. Yeah, I hope you get it and read it and check out the content, dig into the sources, because as you do, you realize, wow, this is not just our views here. All right, I appreciate Mary being with us today. From the heart, friends, I am not discouraged by the crazy stuff happening around us, and I don't want you to be discouraged. You say, well, Mike, you're an optimist. You're just a perennial optimist. It's true that I am an optimist. And my gut level reaction to bad news is it'll all turn out all right. It'll all be good. Or what Satan means for evil, God will turn for good. And, you know, the joke is with Nancy and I that she's my lead weight that keeps my helium balloon from flying away. And we laugh about that. You know, she is a master gardener, landscaper, I mean, stunningly so. And every year, though, she's surprised to see the plants come back. Every year. In other words, even though she knows that scientific law, that if the thing is properly cared for, it will come back, she's still stunned to see it. So we were laughing about the degree to which she is not by nature an optimist. She's a woman of faith. She's a woman of strong faith, unshakable faith. But just in the natural, I'm Mr. Optimist. Like, we'll hear a report, and she's like, oh, that's bad news. I'm like, oh, no, it'll be all right. And we'll kind of smile, right? That's the way we see things. And it's a great balance and mix. But I'm not speaking to you now just as Mr. Optimist. I'm speaking to you now as a child of God, as a servant of the Lord, having walked with the Lord now for more than 51 years, which is longer than some of you have been on the planet that are listening, all right? Longer than some of you, a couple of you added up, have been on the planet listening. So I'm speaking as someone who's been in the trenches, who's seen the hard times like everybody else. Overall, I feel my life has been very blessed and compared to many others, easy. But certainly in this world, you suffer loss, you go through hellish trials and difficulties. I'm here to tell you God is faithful. I'm here to tell you that light triumphs over darkness. I'm here to tell you that truth triumphs over error. That right now, I know, even as I'm doing this show, there are people lying about me online. It could be, who knows? It could be coming from 1,000 different places of people who hate me, lying about me, posting false things. But I know ultimately the truth of the gospel. I know ultimately the unshakable nature of the gospel. I know ultimately, 2 Corinthians 13:8, we can do nothing against the truth, but only for the truth. I know Proverbs 21:30, there is no wisdom or counsel against the Lord. So I feel bad for those that attack and mock, because I know they're on the wrong side. And I pray for them with a broken heart. And for many, many years of my life, I've had people slam me, attack me, malign me, only to come back in tears years later and say, Mike, I'm so sorry, you were right. And it's not about me being right. It's a matter of being on the right side. If you're on God's side, if you're holding to biblical values, you may be scorned in the short term, but you'll be hailed in the long term, either in this world or in eternity. And if God is for us, who can be against us? So be encouraged. The pushback is at hand. God is at work. And even if everything collapsed in the world around us, it would just be a greater opportunity for us to preach the gospel. If things got worse in society than we've ever seen, we'll have the greatest harvest we've ever seen because people will be desperate and looking for God. And even now, there's a great work of God taking place among young people in America. In the midst of the isolation, loneliness, depression, anxiety, fear, God is at work. It's in the early stages, but God's at work. And we're going to see amazing things in the days to come. And many of you are nodding because this is what you're seeing yourselves. Hey, let me invite you to partner with us in a way that will bless you and bless us as well. Every day, part of my routine, my daily regimen, especially before a workout, but otherwise at the beginning of the day, I take my nitric oxide and MyoHealth, so powder, put them in a drink, did it before radio today. Drink that and then start the day with Nopalea. So these Trivita wellness products, I personally use them, have been blessed. A friend of mine doing bodybuilding preparation, I gave him some of the samples to use, and he said he's seeing a change in overall energy and muscle development. So I told him, give it a few more weeks, we'll get an official story from you. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is that Trivita believes so much in what we're doing that they've said, listen, Dr. Brown, we'll take 100% of the first order and donate that 100% to your ministry. And then all subsequent orders, we'll give over a tithe to support your ministry because they want to see the line of fire blanket America. Some of the stations we're on right now, we're on specifically with the help of Trivita. So if you haven't called in, gotten your wellness consultation, call 800-771-5584. If I wasn't personally blessed by these wellness supplements as well, I wouldn't be talking about it. In fact, Trivita said, we're not going to work with you unless you personally benefit. And then if you do, you can share more freely. So health, vitality, it starts with diet. Everything starts there. These are supplements, not substitutes. But these can really enhance the quality of your life added in. So call 800-771-5584. Tell them Dr. Brown sent you. Or go to the Trivita website, trivita.com, and make sure you use the code BROWN25. When you call in, you'll get your automatic discount. But use the code BROWN25. You get 25% off your order. And if you get like monthly shipping, just you get the discount stays with you. So enjoy the discount, enjoy the products. But just know, hey, you're helping us touch people around America and around the world. You're helping extend our voice. We are in the early stages of a major expansion plan, looking for another, just went on live March 20th to our great station in Phoenix. So shout out to all of our Phoenix listeners. I've got another major city that we're, God willing, about to launch on. So we do it with your prayer support. Those of you who are our torchbearers, our monthly supporters, you hold our hands up. Those of you who help us with one-time gifts, those of you who pray for us, thank you. Together, we are making a difference. And with Trivita's help as well, we've really put this into high gear in terms of expansion. So thanks for partnering with us. Thanks for joining together. I'm here to tell you the truth. I'll be ruthlessly honest with the truth, but the truth is that Jesus is Lord. He rose from the dead. That's all I need to know. That is all I need to know.
You can't resist.